Everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. Today, we're talking about a topic that Kari brought to me, or I should say to our Excel spreadsheet, because that's where we keep all our topics. And it just was one phrase that turned actually into a much bigger conversation about the roles we play in our lives. But before we jump in, if you're enjoying these conversations, I would love it if you would take a second to follow the podcast wherever you listen. It really helps other people to find us. And then if you have another minute, if you could leave a rating or review, that would be incredibly grateful. So now, Carrie, tell me where this came from.
I actually wish I had a better
That's
answer,
why I'm
but this
laughing
is
because I'm like, we don't
so.
know.
I do not remember when we had this conversation before, and you reminded me that we came up with it, that we talked about it, and we were like, oh, cool. And then again this week, I was like, wait, what?
That's hilarious.
So somehow the phrase main character energy, and I cringe when I say that because I think you and I are enough, just to be smart business people, especially you, like we're enough aware of this stuff, and we have young people in our lives. But like I also don't like to give into this like YouTube speak or no TikTok
Mm,
speak, but I don't really know what it comes from. And maybe it's more than that because I ended up finding a few things about it that were really interesting. The phrase main character energy, it got stuck in my head a little bit, enough to have suggested it. So I think that's funny. And then I think about it often because when I'm coaching people or, talking to peers and people who are kind of struggling to find the women who come to our retreat are great examples because we keep in touch with them and we check in, and it's like they leave our retreats very much the main character, and I'll explain that when we get into it. Like they're really focused on, okay, it's my time now and this is my next best chapter, and
yeah.
then life kind of pulls you into different roles, and so we're going to talk about why that happens. And so I did find an article in Psychology Today that talked about it as a phrase that became popular in social media, mostly around reclaiming agency and romanticizing your own life. So
Mm.
sometimes it was in healing, sometimes it was getting over divorce, and healing, obviously, getting healthier, um, learning how to set boundaries and like really, kind of center yourself. And that's a common theme here with, the women we're talking to, is just having been raised in these times of being more, like raised to center other people and put yourself last. Like, no way, no more. So
Yeah.
the article went into Gen Z and social media and performance, which is not really where my mind went. But one idea stayed with me. It said people who see themselves as active participants in their own story tend to show up more resilient and stronger in their mental health.
I think that is fascinating. So the reason I even brought it back up to you is because again, it had been sitting on the Excel spreadsheet for so long, and I kept thinking, what is main character energy? And I think
Me.
I kept moving it around, because we rearrange things as we talk, interview guests and so forth. And then out of the blue, I was on Instagram, and one of my favorite reality TV stars, Stassi from Vanderpump Rules, happened to mention on her socials. And the way she brought it up was like when she was on Vanderpump, and she's a millennial, so it doesn't really align necessarily with Gen Z, but when she was on Vanderpump, one of the big storylines every season was what a bitch she was on her birthday. Like there's
Mm.
episode after episode be like, "It's my birthday, do what I want." And so this was she was doing a TikTok, I think, on her birthday, saying how she's gotten to an age where she realizes she is the main character in her life, so she no longer feels the need to sort of make a big deal out of being the main character of her life. So I think that's really an interesting. I mean, I think that aligns with what you just said, right? So now she's at an age where she's matured, she's had her own kids, she's been married for several years, and she realizes it's up to her to be the main character in her life versus trying to be big and bold and annoying in some
Right,
ways,
right.
right? So I think that's really fascinating. And you're right. I don't think most of us walk around thinking I'm the main character right now. We're just sort of moving through the day. But if you actually stopped and asked yourself that question in the middle of a random Tuesday, I'm curious if you'd even like your answer.
No, that's
So,
true. And we are going to get to that. But since you brought that up, I will say that that article did spend a lot of time on that aesthetic version, right? And how it turns
mm,
into performance, which is what it sounds like she was sharing or revealing there or learning over time, right?
yeah.
So it's people documenting the appearance of a fuller life without necessarily living one.
Mm,
I've definitely observed that with, some young millennials I'm related to, where I was like, wow, what they're putting out there is absolutely stunning. But what I know to be true for them, it's a little
right.
less exciting. And I'm worried about that. And then I also
Sure.
saw them grow out of that, luckily. But that is a real thing. It's worth naming because it's not where I landed. I kept thinking less about the aesthetic and more about the mechanics underneath it. Like, forget the lighting, the soundtrack, just struck like the way I live. I can't even imagine. People always say to me, like, "Oh God, you should just be like vlogging your recipes or the way you cook." And I'm like, I can't even imagine like what it would take. There are
Yeah.
people who do that so well, and I'm just like stopping for lighting and angles. I don't know. This is about as much as I can do. Even when we temporarily tried to work with Liam on using these really fancy cameras, I
Right.
was like, I don't even like. We
I was
would
like, I
work so
can't.
hard, and then we would have a great conversation, and then we'd look at it, and we looked like we were in the witness protection program. So funny.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's funny. That's such a interesting, as you were saying all this, I was like, I mean, we are doing main character energy with literally the things we know, but at the same time, it's one of the reasons we don't edit. It's just we want this to be
Mm-hmm.
sort of as authentic as it can be. We get people asking us all the time, dipping into our emails like, we can edit your videos better for YouTube. I'm like, nah, that's,
No,
I mean, it's just not our thing.
right. And honestly, that is our version of it because number one, we really do a lot of what we do is lift up other people.
Yeah.
So, and so we're doing a lot of that. And also, I don't know, like to me to be so for me, and I'm not saying this is true for me to be so focused on that, that is not putting myself first because that is not my wheelhouse.
Totally.
It's not where I'm comfortable and it's not what I'm going to enjoy.
Yep.
So structurally, like the actual events of your week, are you making things happen? Are you managing things? Are you watching things like that? Getting to a place where it just is really natural to make sure that like you're checking in that this is what I want to be doing or this is what's
Yeah.
best for me is I think what we're going to get at.
Yeah. I mean, that's again a much more useful question of sort of like, is this what everybody wants me to be living? Is this what's going to make everybody think I'm cool? Or are you actually living your best life honestly? So, again, at our best chapter yet, retreats, it's about what do you want to be doing that feels in alignment for you, that brings you joy, not that looks performative or beautiful to the outside.
Yeah. As I was as I was going like yeah, I mean as I was going through it, it was me thinking of like okay, the and I've talked about this before. I don't know if I've talked about it like online here or you and I just talk about it because it's all blends together. But
Totally.
Chris Rock has that special he did right after his divorce called Tambourine. I think it's what it's called, or Tambourine's in the title. And obviously that's about marriage, but it kind of applies here or still cracks me up where it's like, you can't move a couch by yourself. You both have to be working on it. So it is like a band, but sometimes you're the lead singer and sometimes you're the tambourine player. And, nobody likes an angry tambourine player. No one enjoys an angry tambourine player. Sometimes you just got to support them and
Right.
play the tambourine. And so I was thinking about that. So I'm sure like me kind of thinking this through isn't me saying this for the first time. So if this exists out there, just know that I have no idea. But there's main character, right? There's a supporting character. There's a stage manager and there's an audience member. That's like for
Mm,
purposes of this conversation today. I want to talk about how we can be all four of those.
I love that. So before we get into what each one means, I want to ask you something. So why do you think this language landed for you specifically? Like why theater, why roles, instead
Mm.
of just asking whether you are living your life on purpose or not?
That's a great question. I think being associated with you and your family too, I think just you being in LA, like and other people I know, like I think it is really fun and useful to look at the way we work with women around living their life to think about it that way. Like, like are you your main character? We talk about writing your best chapter, this arc. And so it just kind of it just kind of like main character already put me in a plot,
Yeah,
script kind of situation. So then I think that's why I started thinking of it that way. And I'm sure we could come up with a bunch of other metaphors like pilot, co-pilot, flight attendant,
totally,
a
totally.
person
Yeah.
like to, get in the, I mean, we could, this is just where, yeah. And also I think the yes and no version lets people off the hook. So if I ask someone, are you living your life on purpose? Almost everyone will say, yeah, because nobody wants to say no to that question. No,
Right.
no, just kind of seeing where, just a tumbleweed. But if if you give people a role, like something a little with a little bit, I don't know, of a kind of an idea around it, I think they can actually look at it honestly. And it's easier to say, like, oh, I'm definitely the stage manager right now,
Yeah, and I
than
think
it
like
is for to say I'm not living my life on purpose. Like, I just think you got to give people roles they can relate to so they can make their way back to what they think they want to be. Because I don't think anyone wants to be a supporting actor or the stage manager or the audience member if they really think about it their whole life. Sometimes you
right.
do.
Right, totally. I think that's interesting. Again, maybe not everybody knows what a stage manager is, but they know what a manager is. And so it gives them a framework to think where sometimes are you living your life on purpose can feel a little too broad. But again, if you can take that step back and take the shame out of it, you're not failing at your life. You might just be cast in a role that you didn't necessarily choose right in this moment.
Yeah. See, I'm loving this. Look at all these phrases we can use. And I think roles can change because if it's not already obvious, like we're talking about how easy it is to become the stage manager because we're good at it. We're
Yeah.
really good at it. And someone needs to do that. And it can be like for me like a drug hit, like
Mm.
a cheap high, because I am so good at it that if I switch into that role and just like, okay, I'm just going to take a little bit of time to set this up, set you up for success, you're going to be really grateful. I don't know that I actually think those things through, but that's how it
Right.
goes. So I think subconsciously, if I can help other people be organized, and they feel good, then I feel good. And it's kind of a cheap high. So like
Yeah.
maybe it's not meaningless. They're people I care
Right.
about. And I do love to, help other people. That's just who I am. But I like if that's all you ever do, you're gonna, you're gonna get to a place where like, wait a second.
Totally.
I don't need
Yeah.
to always do this for you. You can do this for yourself. And that is like, obviously my kids are a lot older and nobody needs me to do a ton of that, but that's something I can relate to. So it's not a diagnosis. It's more like, what part are you playing this week? And yeah, I like, also, I do listen to a lot of podcasts and I love listening to Smartless and hear them talk about, how much more respect they have for directors having been in that
Hmm.
chair versus, and like what it's like. And then also how much respect, as a director they have for actors. And so I love hearing about people in a lot of different roles, producer, screenwriter, and all that stuff, and how they really, like, everyone's role is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's take these one at a time. Main character. Let's start with the big kahuna. So go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say what I think, but I think you're gonna have a lot more brilliance on this as well. So, like, obviously, it's when you're in the scene, you're making the choice, you're having the hard conversation, you're showing up for the thing even when it's uncomfortable. You're not waiting for permission, and you're not waiting to see what everyone else decides first.
Yeah, so the main character is not necessarily about being the center of attention, but centering themselves in their own life and not, I love the idea of not waiting for permission, right? Again, because it's still so top of mind. This I think about last week and what was happening for us on Facebook. The amount of people that were men that were and a few women that were attacking us in the episode around women not feeling safe. And I just came out fighting, and that's who I am. That's my main character energy. Like, fuck you. I'm gonna come right back at you. So it is, I don't, and there was a moment where you and I haven't talked about this. but there was a moment where I was like, oh shit, I should be making sure that Carrie's okay with the way I'm doing this. But then I loved it because you came in with your main character energy and you handled it a little bit differently than I did. Didn't
There's
matter.
some where I was a little bitey. I'm sure you saw that too.
Yeah, but I was really bitey. I mean, and because I get to, I'm at for all of those things, I'm just, my main character energy is like, don't tell me to sit down and shut up, which is the
Right.
vibe I was getting, right? And so
Mhm.
I think that's, I wasn't waiting to let this play out. We both got to a point where we did let it just like, fuck it, whatever, let these guys yammer on and on. Um, but I think it's recognized, it's having your own agency, right? You used the word
Mhm.
earlier versus waiting for somebody else to tell you, okay, it's your time to go on stage.
Right. No, that's good. That's such a good point because I think it would be a misunderstanding to think the main character is someone who is an attention hog.
Hmm.
Um, I think some of the most main character people I know like are actually really quiet about it. Nobody's clapping. They're just the ones who actually decide instead of drift, right? They're
Hmm.
the ones who are driving forces. There's a difference between being the center of the room and being the author of your own life, and I think that that's really lovely because people who do not like attention sometimes don't know how to center themselves,
Mm,
and it's like that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get attention. It just means you have a lot more say over how the story plays out, right? So
yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up.
All right, so supporting character is one I think, both of us would agree a lot of women live in and don't question. They're present, they're helpful, but again, the whole scene is built around someone else's story, and there's often the thought like, gosh, if I wasn't here, the plot would barely change. And I want to be careful here, right? Because being a supporting character in someone else's chapter is not automatically a bad thing. Sometimes that's exactly where love and generosity live. The question is whether it's a chapter or is it the whole book, right?
Mm, yeah, right. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, it, it is, it's a really good feeling when you can support someone else in a
Hmm.
tough time. And you're right that if your whole life, if you're that character, it's not good. I was just for some reason, I know this may sound cheesy, but the movie Beaches,
Uh-huh.
like that whole song is based on like somebody who was in the shadows, but she was the wind beneath her wings. Like she was the
Right.
one who was like supporting. And I always thought that that was so sad. Like, don't celebrate that completely. Like, why didn't you also support her? And she
But
did in
didn't
the
she
end, right?
sort of,
She
I was
did
gonna
in the
say at
end.
the end she
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
But I like
Yeah.
in the moment, I remember watching it thinking that, like,
Yeah.
and I love Bette Midler so much. So I don't even want to call attention to like anything negative about that. But yeah, in the end, her job was to support her. And I have seen that so much. I've lived long enough now to see that so much in life where with partners where someone was really the supporting character, but then that other person or that person got ill and then that person had to show up for them. And I think that maybe it isn't equal at the time, but over a course of time in a relationship that can happen. Or just karmically that can happen in your
Hmm.
life. I don't know, but yeah, you're right. It's uncomfortable, that one, because you don't want to be calling someone out if they are needing to support someone, but are they
Totally.
hiding there too?
Yeah. No, it's funny you bring up beaches. One, because Darren and I were just talking about. Have you ever seen the beach's house? It's like on Newport Beach.
No.
Yeah, the house is actually on Newport Beach. I saw it several years
It's
ago.
weird because I'm very familiar with Newport Beach, but I don't think I was ever
I
made
know,
that
isn't that weird?
connection.
I offline we'll talk about that. But anyway, so it's funny that you bring it up because we were just talking about beaches. But also, when that movie came out, I was friends with a girl. I mean, we were in high school, and I was friends with a girl that I remember watching that movie thinking, "Oh, I'm Barbara Hershey and she's Bette Midler." And we are no longer friends. But in that moment, I felt like I was that, not that I was the wind beneath her wings, but she was the loud character, right? Like she was the
Yeah,
big person. And I felt like I was just like, it was Michelle and Lisa, right? Um, so not that.
that's hard to imagine.
I know,
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say that. But that's the thing, right? Like that was a little bit of a season, right? I was in beginning of, I mean, we're literally talking my freshman year in high school, you know? And I think in the time, like I was just sort of happy to be part of that of her life. We were friends. She was my best friend at the time, you know. And so again, to your point, sometimes we're like happily supporting someone else's story. I moved to Chicago because of Darren. I moved to LA because of Darren, you know, but supporting is not the lesser role. Once I got to each of those places, I was back into my own main character energy. So, like you said, it's really only becomes a problem when it's the only role you've ever played. Um, when you never ask for the main part, or have never been you've never been in a situation where you get asked to play the main character role. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, what's really coming to mind too as you say that is we know so many people, you've been there, I've been there, but like you definitely so many people, it's just the rite of passage to step in for your parents the way they had for you when you were young, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes like that can get really tricky between siblings. I say that, I don't know why I'm saying it so carefully because I have great siblings who are like, my brother takes such good care of my mom, so does my sister. We had each other's backs so brilliantly during that time. I know you and your sister did too when,
Hmm.
you know, with your dad. Obviously no warning with your mom, but
Yeah.
um I think we know so many people who are like thrust into this like supporting role and nobody else is helping them with it.
Yep.
Um, anyway, not that that's exactly what you were getting at, but it can you can get put there.
Yeah, totally. And you know, one way of being a supporting role is coming from a very generous, authentic place, you know. The other, if you've never stepped outside of that, can feel like you're disappearing. And you
Mm-hmm.
may not be choosing to do that, but the longer you stay in that role, the more it becomes comfortable to disappear, right?
Mm, yeah, and
So,
that's where the martyr stuff comes in, which I know you and I both are like, ooh.
yeah, totally. All right, your turn, stage manager.
Okay, that's the one I think a lot of us live in without realizing it. And again,
Mm,
you can get a lot of you can get a lot of dopamine hits from that. You're not in the scene. And actually, I really love this. Like, I have chosen a lot of careers. That's why, like, when you first wanted to do this, and then I have no problem being on stage, no problem leading retreats, because again, the object of it is to like lift other people up in that experience. But to be on camera at first was like, well, that is not something that I think I want because I'm just, well, you think about my background, a lot of what I was mostly really good at was writing grants or like getting donors together with, you know, like really incredible organizations or something. I really liked that, right? So
mhm.
stage manager, and again, you can deep dive into some of the similarities with the supporting thing. Like, why is it that you don't really want to be visible or responsible here? Maybe it's the youngest child thing. I don't know, but like feeling valuable and seeing it play out, like connecting. I love connecting people. I know you do too, so I'm sure you're relating
Mhm.
to parts of this. So you're
Yeah,
not in the scene, you're backstage, you're making sure everyone's lighting is right. There's a lot of satisfaction that comes with this. Their cues are
totally.
on time, their costumes fit, you're running the whole production and somehow never in it, right? But
Yeah.
like it doesn't run without you. That part I don't like. I think really truly something I've learned over time and in all my different work experiences is the best stage managers or leaders or managers really create something that they can step out of and someone else can step into.
Yeah.
So it really shouldn't be, it doesn't run without you, but you know, let's be honest, sometimes it doesn't go as well unless, you know, people like us. And I'm not irreplaceable, but people like us, you know, make sure I can think of all those things. I have that 30-foot view. I'm scanning and I'm solving all the time, like, you know, 30 yards ahead. So it is a very rewarding role for me. And it can turn into a supporting thing. You know, I think you can end up stepping into
Yeah,
another role
I
from
think,
there.
well, and I think where the distinction might be is that if you believe that it can't happen without you, then then that's where it becomes a problem, right? Like if you're
Right.
leading or managing so that the next time somebody else can do this role, of course they're not going to do it exactly like you. Of course you're going to look at it and be like, "Oh, I would have done that differently." But that's okay, right? So to me, stage managing doesn't sound like someone who's necessarily absent from their life. They're actually very present, but it does sort of sound like somebody who might be exhausted. I mean,
Right. And also,
that's crazy.
if you think about our Queen's chat,
Mm,
probably you, actually, if I think about your last year or two, maybe even more, I was going to say, you're probably the least of us to come in and be like a little resentful about all you're doing. Right. Like there's a lot that each of us will come in. I'm especially thinking about Melissa and I, but like there's a lot of like, do this and this and this. So
oh,
I do think it can get to a place where you need some friends to be like, yeah, sister, you're doing a lot.
totally.
So
Absolutely.
like it
Yes.
is it's a good thing to do if you enjoy it and it's helping things run in a way that also lifts you up. But when you get to that place where you hear yourself do that or you need to do that, maybe it's a good course corrector to, okay, I got to throw some of these jobs back at other people. I can share the stage management here.
I think
um
that's an interesting take. I know what you're saying. Yeah. So just to put it in context, you and I have a thread that we've had for, damn, 6 years now with
yeah.
Elijah and Melissa, who were on our first season, if you want to go back and listen to that episode. Um, and you're right. I am the least likely to come in and be like, I'm doing this and this and this and this. I think because I'm like, I don't have time to stop and say I have all, and not that
Yeah.
anybody does, but it's like, but I understand why, like you do go, because there's validation there, right?
Hmm.
But it is an interesting thing to think, okay, if I need validation, maybe I am doing too much.
Right.
That's an
Right.
interesting take. Hmm.
And maybe I don't even think I need validation. Maybe I'm just venting so that I'm
You are
nicer
venting.
on
Normally
on
we are.
on this end of that. I'm just, this will help me be nice if I can just go.
Totally.
I think that's probably what Melissa would say too.
Yes,
But
100%.
yeah, like either way, the act of it, the experience of it does always redirect me to, you know, into a place of like, no, that like you're doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like the more you do, the more you do. So stop it. So it's a good redirector to be like, only do it if it's like, if it's good for you, like only keep doing this
Hmm.
if it's working for you. And don't keep doing it, like nobody wants to be resentful. And that is so the work we do is like,
Yeah.
you then like stage managers and supporting roles can become martyrs.
Yes. Yes. And if you're starting to feel that, then that would be the time to take right to take a step back, because you're right, there's a trap built into it when you're really good at managing everything, then people depend on you for that, so you keep doing it, and they're they're you might fall into the trap of people only notice when you're no longer serving them. They don't notice
Mm-hmm.
that you're no longer serving yourself. So it reminds me of honoring your yes and no, which we're doing
Right.
at the next retreat.
Exactly.
Um, because that's the moment where you realize, God, I'm spending most of my energy on other people and it's not serving me. And I am not able to create my next best chapter and be my main character because I'm too busy helping everybody over here. And if I step out of that, what does that mean? Will they be mad at me? Will I no longer be valuable? So there's just a lot around there.
Yeah. And I started to think, like I had written this down here and I'm not sure I even agree with it, which is nobody chooses it on purpose. I actually think it can be a default role. Like it
Yeah.
can be you can reach for it because you're going to get a lot of satisfaction if you're good at it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I'll do it because I'm good at it and I enjoy being good at something. Right?
Totally.
And then I get a lot of appreciation. Wow.
Yeah.
Like this looks amazing how you did this. And, I love visiting my mom and like organizing her shelves or something like that, which is exactly the same thing. But like, that's an easy thing for me to do. It would be a little harder to get her to, sit down and talk about something else we need to get to if she doesn't want to, like cleaning out her
Yeah.
garage. But like, those kind of things, I think you fall into it because you're really capable. You may
Hmm.
choose it because you're really kept. Well, somebody needs to keep the whole thing running. Might as well be me because I like when things run well, right?
Right.
And so I think competence can quietly turn into invisibility if
Mm.
you're not, you know, communicating about that. Like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to do all this, but you guys like can take this on, or
Hmm.
this is the stuff I love. in this role, and this other stuff I started taking on because I'm good at other stuff. I don't really want to do that, right? So I think the way to like have that role that keeps you in main character energy is just constantly like, which what of this do I enjoy, and what of this could I hand over?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. What is serving me and what is no longer serving me? Okay, so then there's audience member, and that's when you're just watching other people's lives happen, maybe watching your own life happen, scrolling instead of living it.
Yeah, I think that is a little sad. I mean,
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes it is really lovely, like to go to a wedding and just be a guest. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, I don't know. Sometimes it's really lovely to just be coasting and observing. So I don't want to say it's totally sad or scary, but there's something about, I think, what you and I worry about with the people who don't come to our retreats, but who talk about wanting to, it's like, yeah, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
retreats look so lovely, or I don't know. There's just something about it that I feel like if it's okay to have like everything, like each of those, it's okay to experience it for what it is. But if that's where you stay, life's not a
Yes.
spectator sport.
Totally, right? And it doesn't always look like doom scrolling on the couch. Sometimes it does look like showing up to your own life and just narrating it instead of participating in it. Watching your marriage from a distance, watching your kids grow up through your phone screen instead of your own eyes.
Yeah.
Saying I keep wanting to do something and then never doing it. Like, spoiler
Yeah.
alert, you don't have to tell us you want to come to the retreat if you never want to come to the
Oh my
retreat.
gosh.
Just no hard feelings. Like
Yeah.
maybe retreats are not your thing. You can say, wow, that retreat looks lovely, and stop at that.
Yeah.
Because
And
if
I
you say,
believe you want to come. You,
well, exactly. If you say you want to come, we believe you. And
yeah.
then we start to wonder again, are you participating in your own life?
Yeah. And I think that that's a protective move that people aren't even aware of, right?
Yep.
Because if you're only ever watching, you never have to risk anything.
Yeah.
You never have to be disappointed
Hmm.
because you were never really in the scene to begin with, right? So it's like, oh, okay, but how, like, where is that going to get you if and then if you go through that and then you go, I really want to do that, and then you don't,
Hmm.
to
Breaks down
hear
your
yourself.
confidence.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. You keep saying you're going to do something, you know, don't do it. So it again, if you don't want to do something, don't say you want to make somebody else happy, right?
right.
And again, this it's not always about laziness or distraction. I think that's a really important point. Sometimes, as you said, watching from the sidelines is safer than being in the arena. And oftentimes, when somebody tells me repeatedly that they want to come to a retreat and they don't, there's a little heart squeeze for me because I'm like, I think you're scared of what might happen, and sometimes
Yeah.
it's simply like, I've never, I don't want to be in a room full of people I don't know. And I don't normally travel like that. Again, all valid points, but like unpacking that versus constantly saying you're going to do something and then not doing it. It sounds like I'm ragging on people that don't come to the retreat. I'm not. I find
It's an
myself,
example we
well, I
brought up.
find
Yeah.
myself with you and I have this conversation. Like it doesn't hurt our feelings, but it hurts us for you.
Yeah,
That makes
because
sense.
right, yeah. And this is just another a differently packaged way of getting to that same thing we've brought up many times, especially in our early two seasons, which is, you know, you nobody's stopping you but you.
Yeah.
And if you're hiding there, but like revealing what you want, like that does eventually like really break you down into, I mean, I like, I'm not making some clinical diagnosis, but it might feel like depression, or it might just feel like flat.
Yeah.
Um, to constantly hear yourself say you want to do something that your body and brain and heart just feel yourself never doing, it's gonna
Hmm.
like it's just kind of pulls you and disconnects you from life force. So I feel like if this is resonating with you or making you uncomfortable hearing that, like think about it. And then also don't give yourself a hard time again for enjoying being an audience member sometimes, because that is sometimes all we have the energy for.
A
I
hundred
think it's
percent.
just if you're identifying with it only and none of these other roles,
Mm,
you know, that's what we would love for you to be gentle with yourself around and get really curious about.
yeah. So this article that you found was really framed around Gen Z and social media, but we're coming at it from a sort of a broader view.
Right.
And I
Well,
hope
this is
it's
what I always do. I try to take things and make them work for me.
that's
Main
main
character.
character energy. No, I love it. So, what do you think could resonate with women our age? That, again, yes, we're all on social media, but I don't see a lot of women our age making sure they have the perfect lighting.
Yeah.
They're just showing their lives. So, what might resonate with women our age?
Well, I do think it's, I mean, I think, to sell articles and clicks and stuff, I do think that was more fun and interesting than like what
Mm,
we're getting at. But I do think that this happens in every single, generation I see. You see it in friend groups.
mm,
You see some main characters and some out of insecurity become the support people, and
hmm.
and some want to run everything, and some just feel lucky to be there and they want to stay quiet. And so it's funny, you see that everywhere. But I really do think it's it's really about not shaming anyone who takes care of other people, but wondering how you could like be your own support person, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm wondering if a lot of the people that might listen to our pod, because we do think of, we know our demographic is sort of 40s, 50s, 60s. So, a 22-year-old on TikTok is probably really stepping into the main character energy. But I wonder if our people are sort of stepping out of stage manager, right? Because now they're empty nesting
Mm-hmm.
you know, or they have no fucks left to give. And so now they're re-entering a main character energy or want to at least.
Yeah, because I mean, keep using this analogy, we have decades to build this production, right? We're like seasoned producers now, right?
Totally.
Careers, marriages, kids, aging parents, projects, passions, all that stuff. So by
Yeah.
midlife, you're not managing one show, you're managing several at once. You have different roles for them, right? And they are like, you haven't gotten so good at it that you're stepping back into your own story can feel like it, sometimes it can feel disorienting. Sometimes
Yeah.
it might be like a real, like, depending on what's going on in your life, it might be really fun to just step out and be like a support role for someone else. But really, truly, I think we get to a place where we're really comfortable with that, as long as we know where we are in the process. Like, okay, is my snapback, or is my baseline main character, even if
Mm,
it's not exciting, like, am I abandoning my main character needs right now to go tend to someone else's.
yeah.
I think that's maybe, I don't know if I said that well enough, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm thinking.
Well, I love I like the thought, or it's like's probably the wrong word. I think it's interesting to think that when you choose or you have the opportunity to step back as the main character for your own story, depending on how long you've been the stage manager, the audience member, or the supporting actor, or and maybe you've been all three of those for 20 years off and on in different ways, that now getting back into main character energy can be disorienting. And and so and then there's this trap of sort of like, I'm competent, so I'm competent in being the stage manager, the supporting actor, and the idea of being visible, or even to your own self, right? Because again, we're not talking about this in the TikTok world. We're talking about being in alignment in your own life and being the main character of your own story, that isn't like, look at me. It's more like, I am now doing what feels right for me. And that even visibility to yourself is can be a little bit scary, right?
For sure. Yeah. I I would I want to bring this to something that we have, like a phrase you and I both use often, because I think it points to research, but it's really the basis of so much of our coaching training, which is the stories we tell ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a psychologist named, I got to look at it, McAdams,
Because
sorry, at Northwestern, and he spent decades on something called narrative identity theory. And his basic idea is that who you are is not just a list of traits, it's the evolving story you tell yourself about your own life, your past, your present, and where you think you're headed, which is so much of like what we learned in coaching 101, right? This is, we're not dealing with facts, we're dealing with, the story you tell yourself.
Totally. So identity is literally the story that we are narrating to ourselves, essentially.
Yeah, so that's a theory, and I agree with it. I mean, I think that's very often turned out to be true with people I've worked with and myself,
Hmm.
right? And the better part that connects to our four roles is that McAdams found that people whose life stories are built around themes of agency, meaning being in control of your own choices, and communion, meaning connection to other people, tend to report higher well-being and stronger mental health. So basically, what he's saying in terms of this conversation is, if you're telling yourself your story, a story of like, who you are in a role that matters in connection to other people, which is main character, but in connection to other main characters, you're going to be happier.
Interesting. And I just, as you, all those words, being in
Mm-hmm.
control of your own choices, being connected to other people, those people tend to report higher well-being and stronger mental health. That just strikes me because I think we're in this stage right now in history where women in particular are being told we don't get to control our own choices. And we are feeling, human beings are feeling so disconnected from each other. So I think there is this sense in just general of malaise that is happening to us right now just because of where we are in this time in history. And so it's interesting because agency and connection, that basically is main character and supporting character, but as psychological ingredients instead of characters in a play.
Right. And what struck me is that neither one is good. Neither one is its own goal, right? It's
Hmm.
not that agency is good, connection's bad. Obviously,
Right.
connection would never be bad. It's that a lot of us let go of the agency have sometimes because of
Mm.
time or whatever, right? We kept the connection, we kept showing up for everyone, we just quietly wrote ourselves out of the choices. And
Right. So
I say
that,
we, but I do think, you know, sometimes I'm better at that than other times. Like in terms of
yeah.
time, like I had to just go do this first. You know what I mean?
Right, totally. But then that loops back into stage manager, right? And to your point, sometimes that is an easier role to just sit in because you know how to do that so well, right? So you can feel deeply connected to everyone around you and still have zero agency in your own story because what you've been doing, this connection has been in service of others and helping them manage their lives or whatever it might be, right?
That's exactly it.
Wow. Okay. So, did the research say anything about how people actually shift out of low agency, like that story? Because
Yeah,
knowing the theory is one thing, but again, what do we do about it?
I know, right? So from what I read, it is, and I think when I say this to you, you're gonna be like, yeah, we see this all the time in coaching, but is less about a single big rewrite and
Hmm.
more about what McAdams calls redemption sequences, which I love this term. I feel like I
Yeah.
want to write that down for our retreats. Moments where something difficult happened and the person narrates it as leading somewhere rather than just narrating it as something that happened to them.
Mm.
So it is not about pretending hard things were secretly good, because I hate that. What's the gift in this? Like when you say that too soon to
Yes.
people, it just, you might as well get a pie in your face. But it is about it is about deciding you get to be the one who makes the meaning out of it instead of just the one it happened to. And I
Oh
also
my
would add to
God.
that the timing of when you get to make that meaning out of it. No pressure
Yeah.
to do that today.
Totally. I was actually just having a conversation yesterday with a friend of ours, both of ours, Amy Spence, and we were talking about some things that she's going through, and she was like, I'm trying to see why this is for me. And I literally was like, okay, well, we don't need to do that right now. Like, let's just, what you're feeling is valid. Like, let's not jump to that, right? And I understand why you'd want to, right? But I think we can talk about our hard seasons as main character language or as audience member language. You might start in audience like, okay, this is happening, and then you
Yeah,
get to main character, right? And
right.
that, but there's no timetable on that. I do think hindsight's 2020. I have certainly lived that in my life. And sometimes I can get, we talked about my mom. I've said this on the pod before. Like, I got pretty quickly to, if my mom had lived, she would have had a heart problem. We wouldn't, she would be able to see no one during COVID. That would have been really hard. So while it was horrible that we lost her so unexpectedly, um, there was a gift in that, you know. And but like I just happened to get to that quickly. If it had taken me a year to get to that, so be it. You know, try to spiritually bypass pain so that you can find the gift. Oh, yeah, I have
Mm.
issues with that.
No, I think, I mean, I knew you would be like, oh, I know exactly what this is. um, yeah, it's like this happened to me versus this happened. And
Yeah.
here is what I did with it. And they're two different stories, really. The facts are identical, but I remember Stacey used to say this all the time. It's like the pain of what we go through, like whether it's a trauma or disappointment, it's way less about what actually happened and more the way we saw it and the way we tell ourselves that it's
Mm.
it's the stories we tell ourselves about what happened to us that give us the actual physical pain.
So it's funny. I'm sorry. You have been deep in soccer. I am deep in reality television. So it's so cute. You've been sending me all this soccer stuff. I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about
I
because
know.
I'm
I'm
deep in Love Island. And so
That's so funny.
again, this is coming out way past and judge me if you
Mm.
want, but I did watch Love Island this year and there was a big one of the big episodes was called Movie Night. And what movie night was, and this gets back to what you just said, how you think it happened versus how it happened, right? And one of the big nights was this movie night where everybody on the island got to see what happened. It that they got to watch what happened versus how they remember it happening. And it was a
Wow.
huge like game changer, right? Because there were both men and women. I will say this one thing I love about Love Island. These seem to be actually really good people. Nobody's a dick. They actually are really supportive of each other. But the men like remembered the way they walked through the island a totally different way than they did. And they saw it on the big screen and they were like, fuck. Like even the men were sort of like, oh, I thought you were telling me it was this, but it was really that. And the same with the women. And so it is interesting to understand that like your main character version of something might not have actually happened that way.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay, so let's talk about where this shows up. Marriage, motherhood, work, friendships. You
Mm.
start.
Well, it's interesting because it's not that exciting of an example, but my most recent is that I get Griffin his appointments, including dental, because there's a lot of ongoing dental work from an injury, a seizure injury that caused him to lose a lot of teeth. And that's his like family friend kind of dentist, sort of like he's become very dear to us. So it's not like they don't know me there, but then to actually look at when my last appointment was startling for them and me. It was embarrassing.
Mm,
So, and I was just trying to explain to them, like, caregiver role is that I make sure he gets to all his appointments and totally forget and it's not that I just never think of it. It's just sometimes I have to cancel them. Like I had to cancel a pretty important appointment for myself yesterday because of some, not having the care at the right time. So when my other boys are around, it's a lot easier because they're pretty wonderful to say, oh no, because we're down a caregiver, an official caregiver. It's much easier for them to be like, I got it.
hmm.
But and that's great because then they step into that role so that I can, you know, continue on with whatever my main character needs are. But it is a compromise, and so caregiver families, if you're listening, please be really gentle with yourself because uh, sometimes there is no supporting um, role around. It's really
Yeah.
just you, and so that's difficult. And because I think part of like being a main character in your life is knowing, like, is really asking for some supporting roles as long
Hmm.
as, you know, like it's within reason, right? As long as they have their own agency and their own, it's really hard if you want to pull someone in and they don't take care of themselves either. Then that's just the blind leading the blind. So that gets nuanced, right? But I would say, early on in our marriage, there's a lot of ways I felt like I was the supporting role while he was finishing residency, right?
Mm.
And but then socially, I was the one person like creating a social life for us because he was so busy, and I could focus a lot on my own stuff because we didn't have kids yet. We didn't have kids for 6 years. So I just think different times, if I look back at marriage and kids, if I was one of those people that's like, this is just happening. When's it going to happen for me? Like you can't wait for those roles to come for you. You got to like
Right.
actually make them happen for
You have to
yourself, and
audition.
interpret it, that like really it's the way you're interpreting and the story you're telling yourself around it. What do you want? And like, how do you make it happen? And what would need to be true for me to like actually do it? So I'm really glad that we've had the education we've had and the opportunity to take ownership. I think sometimes in the coaching world, it can get really ridiculous where it's like, you can make anything happen. There's a lot of bypassing that happens there. Like you're not a victim. You can make anything happen. And they bypass like looking at some real stuff you need to heal through before you can actually, go for something. So I don't want to say, anything's possible because I believe that, but like there's a lot of things that you might have to figure out or learn or get training in to make it happen. But certainly it starts with asking for what you like, identifying what you want and then asking for that. um, I think is kind of where I learned how to navigate the different roles. Otherwise I could have totally parked myself in a supporting role and stage manager role and just never really found anything else.
I love that. I love because what I'm taking away from what you're saying is that all of these roles are fluid. And so if I had an invitation to our listeners is to again come at this with curiosity. We all play all of these roles at different times of our life. Sometimes it is foisted upon us, and sometimes we choose it. And so there should never really be any guilt around it. It might have sounded a little bit earlier like I was, saying, damn, if you're in an audience role, you're less than. That's not really true. You
Mm-mm.
get to actively choose these to some most of the time. But really understanding throughout your life where you've stepped into these different roles and being okay with it. And
Mm.
and and then asking yourself, what is this role you want to be playing now, right? I mean, when I think about these roles, right, I have strong main character energy. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. However, with Charlotte last year, um, when she got diagnosed with anorexia, and last summer, the summer of 2025, was incredibly hard. And I was her main caretaker just because I mean, for a myriad of reasons. I have the background. I work from home. Um, Darren was at work. I'm a woman. I understand so much of what her brain was doing, even though it was doing it on steroids in a way that I've never experienced. But I was definitely feeling the sense of like it felt like having a toddler again. And
Mm.
only because I just never felt like I wanted to leave her alone. Not that I was worried that she was going to self-harm, but just I knew what her brain was doing to her. And I wanted to always be there for her to I wanted to be available so that if she walked in and said, hey, I know what that means. It means I'm ready to talk. And so I had to be
Mm.
available so that I could stop whatever I was doing and listen. And so I was absolutely not only the stage manager from making sure that she was getting all her nutrients in to the best of my ability, but also the supporting actor so that I could support her whenever she needed that.
Yeah.
It was not a role I chose, but it was a role I took and took with every fiber of my being. Um, and and now it's interesting because so part of that was putting on the back burner, even trying to get new clients. And now, knock wood, I believe she's at the beginning of truly being recovered. We have some ways to go, but not too far. Way better than we were this time last year. And I find it hard to step back into, okay, I should find some more clients. What I don't find hard doing is working on the pod. So it's also interesting of like, okay, I'm taking all my main character energy and putting it into the pod, which in some ways is easier than trying to find a new client. So again, I think this is a really interesting conversation to be thinking about the different roles we play and how we choose
Yeah.
and why we choose.
Yeah, I would say too that like when I met you, you were do like it was like a beautiful balance of you were working for HCI and you were building your own coaching business and you were just starting the things I know.
Yeah.
And you were also very much a stage mom.
Oh yeah.
Like you were getting Charlotte to a lot of places. Like you were,
Yeah.
and I was just fascinated that you were navigating both because I think a stereotype anyone listening would probably have of a stage mom is they have no life of their own.
Oh yeah, no. I
And
mean, there was a lot, but yeah, no.
right,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
and you were used to it from Irish dancing, but
true.
I'm just saying, like, your pew.
Pew,
my,
pew.
my, my mouth is just going somewhere else. You're proof that you can really manage both at the same
Hmm.
time. Like, and I think that that's something we come across a lot is this assumption that, well, at this stage in my life, this is what I got to do. And you were doing both. And that
Yeah,
was a lot. So, main character, you make decisions without needing everyone to sign off at first. Supporting character, and this isn't everything. This is just something that might stand out about each one of these. You can name 3 ways your week revolved around someone else's goals and struggle. And you might struggle to name one that revolved around yours, right? So,
yeah.
I think that's where I was reading that funny. Okay, stage manager, people say they do not know how you do it all. And instead of pride, you feel tired. And then audience member, you know way more about other people's weeks than your own. That makes me a little sad because I can think of someone I care about a lot who that would they would probably go, ooh, that's me right now.
Yeah,
Anyway, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, again, and these are quippy ways of looking at our lives, right? This isn't meant to diagnose anyone. Again, most of us, as we just said, would see ourselves in more than one and on any given day, but certainly in the arc of our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the retreat a lot, and I guess it would make sense since our retreats are all built around the best chapter yet and creating your next best chapter, which in and of itself, you're not creating your next best chapter to be the audience member. You're creating your next best chapter to be the main character. So when we're trying to think of a song, the perfect song is Unstoppable, which if you
Yeah.
are on any of our socials, you know that our last retreat was our Unstoppable retreat. So we used this song quite a bit back then. The next one coming up is Unique and Amazing. And actually, we are doing quite a bit of this work in this next retreat. We are talking about, not traits, but values and how to honor your yes and no and have boundaries so that you have the space. You get to say yes to being the main character of your own life. So let me find the lyrics for Unstoppable. This song is so fascinating to me because it sound, the what do I want to say, the chorus is amazing, but at the beginning it's really quite sad. So it starts, I'll smile, I know what it takes to fool this town. I'll do it till the sun goes down, and all through the nighttime, I'll tell you what you want to hear. I'll keep my sunglasses on while I shed a tear. To me, that is very supporting actor, and it isn't
Yeah.
until she gets to and again, this is by Sia, where she says, I'll put my armor on, show you how strong I am. I'm unstoppable. I'm a Porsche with no brakes. I'm invincible. I win every single game. I'm so powerful. I don't need batteries to play. I'm so confident. I'm unstoppable today. So even in this song, she sort of starts from a supporting actor character, right? Like I'm gonna just be behind the scenes. I'm gonna look pretty. I'm gonna be performative, and then she sort of steps into her own power, um, and becomes the main character in the chorus.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. So, oh, this stupid microphone keeps falling on me. Okay. So before we close, I'm gonna ask you one more time out loud, no notes. Which role are you in right now?
Oh, this week I have been in all four. But I would say, because we're about to travel and because there's a lot of logistics that need to happen, especially for Griffin, I would say I'm definitely in stage manager mode in a way that I'm proud of. And we're like
Hmm.
planning a bunch of stuff for my mom's 85th.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of that though, and I'm really like doing a lot to look at my calendar to make sure I can protect time to work when I need to and want to, and because I love it, and we have the retreat coming up, and also making sure I get some things on the calendar right when I get back that are like a hike with a friend and,
Mm,
dinner plans and um, being active outside kind of plans, because that's for me. And also
nice.
while we're on that trip, my sister and I are planning to like do a hike and so it's just I think I'm getting better at going, okay, this is a lot of stage manager and supporting role stuff. So I gotta find my own my own main character role in there. What about you?
Yeah. Probably the same. I would say I'm sort of stage managing the things I want that I'm trying to move forward on the pod, right? And then I'm stage managing, helping the deaf aides with some shows that are coming up and making sure the tickets are sold and getting swag and that sort of thing. But I am a main character energy person, and so
Mhm.
I've always I've been in my adult life. I feel like I've been pretty good at making sure that I am always first, right? Making sure I get the workouts in and the blah 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 and making plans with friends and stuff like that. It's what makes being able it makes doing the stage managing thing just fun because it's a choice I'm making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. And then for you listening, we would love to hear from you. Which of the four are you resonating with the most right now? Main character, supporting character, stage manager, audience member, ticket seller. No, I'm just kidding. So message us, comment. We would love to get lovely messages on our social
Yeah.
media posts. Just sit with it. You don't owe anyone this answer, but it is just worth knowing, and we'd love to get in conversation with people about this.
Yeah. Conversation that's fun versus mean. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, as usual. And if this made you think of someone who's been running the show for everyone else and forgot to be in their own show, we would love it if you would share this episode with them.
If you have not already, we would be grateful if you would follow the show, like Lisa asked at the beginning. So leave us a review, tell a friend, and make sure you don't miss a episode.
Thanks for being here, everyone. We'll be back next week.
Bye.